This powerful interview with Sloane, a 32-year military veteran, was recorded while she and I were still on active duty and is being released now for the first time. On this landmark episode of Voice for Valor, we confront a vital question for our time.
Tomorrow, there should be thousands of people who wake up and get processed out. The harm will be done.
At a moment when transgender rights are at the center of a national political firestorm.
Hundreds of women who are currently in the infantry, lethal members of our military serving in the infantry, but you degrade them. You say, we need moms, but not in the military, especially in combat units.
I would point out I've never disparaged women serving in the military. I respect every single female service member that has put on the uniform past and present.
What is the reality for a service member who chooses to live their truth within the U.S. military? In part one of this landmark two-part series, I sit down with Sloane, a highly decorated retired officer who transitioned while on active duty. Sloane shares a raw and unflinching account of her journey from grappling with gender dysphoria in the hyper-masculine world of explosive Ordnance Disposal, or EOD, to the immense courage it took to begin her transition under the military's microscope. This is not a theoretical discussion. It's a deeply personal narrative of fear, resilience, and the fight to be seen. Sloane provides unparalleled insights into her experiences, including candid leadership discussions about her identity with senior officials like former Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley. This episode is a vital listen that touches on a core of American principle. You can agree or disagree with an individual's personal life choices, but what cannot be debated is the freedom to live an authentic life. A freedom that service members like Sloane have sworn an oath to protect for all of us. This is the human story behind the headlines, a story of service, identity, and the transformative power of living with courage. In this episode, you will hear about the weight of dysphoria, a personal in-depth explanation of gender dysphoria and the lifelong journey to self-acceptance. You will also hear transitioning under pressure, the immense personal and professional challenges of transitioning as a senior leader in the U.S. military. Also, leadership and acceptance. Candid stories of interacting with top military leaders like General Mark Milley and about being a transgender service member. The power of storytelling. Why sharing personal narratives is the most powerful tool to break down barriers and foster understanding in a divided world. And last, a life in EOD. An inside look at a distinguished career in one of the military's most dangerous and respected fields. Join us for a profound and necessary conversation that stands as a testament to courage and the fundamental importance of supporting every individual who takes an oath to serve.
Been this in a long time.
Well, it's been about 6 months. Right? It was November timeframe.
It was November. So because I was still recovering from that surgery, and then it was before the election, and then things happened.
I've shared some of your more emotional looking photos with others. People love it. You remember when you sat over there and I had the separate light and you were sitting in the chair? I did some more dynamic range photos and people were like that.
Yeah, my goodness.
Because you provided some vulnerability there. And so I like to get people and that's those staged looks. It's just so cheesy and I just don't enjoy it. So honestly, like us having this conversation right now, this is typically how I will set up my studio sessions.
Yeah.
Because I tend to capture a little bit more authentic moments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, credit to you for creating a space where people can be vulnerable, because vulnerability doesn't come, as we've talked about, like very easily for people who've grown up in an institution over so many decades like you and I have.
Yeah.
It's not something that's welcome. But, together with good people, it's easy to do. So it's credit to you.
I appreciate that. You sent me that message from Law Dork about, okay, it's officially over and they've released the forum, and I don't know if there was an executive order or whatever, but it was that policy letter.
Yep.
And I was just like, here we go again. This is exactly what we were talking about in November when we were thinking about, worst case scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let me be devil's advocate, and then
Yes.
you be you, and you.
All right, let's do it.
You call my BS.
And by the way, we've both grown a lot between then and now.
Yeah.
But go for it. Let's go.
So I'm gonna put my Pete headset hat on
Okay.
and say, it's not DEI. It's why are we focused on the 1% when we need to focus on the war fighter? What am I missing with my Pete headset hat on?
Okay. So I'm going to tell you, I saw something recently that really inspired me. And then it caused me to dig deeper, both together with a real human and into material that this person I'm going to reference actually has done on the topic. Look, you and I have had a conversation about the fact that we are in a fight for every single talented person who can bring what they have to bear on the defense of this Constitution, this nation, the concept and the experiment that it is, and the citizens of it, right? And so Stan McChrystal's got a new book out, Character. A dear friend just presented me with a signed copy of that book. And that was a reconnection with a person that I hadn't talked to since I was a lieutenant colonel, even a baby lieutenant colonel at that. But the point is, right? So what put me back together with this person is I see General McChrystal on one of the morning talk shows 2 Sundays ago, and he gets pressed with a very similar question. And I think what we're all in agreement violently is we need to be more lethal. The question is how. Everybody can have a different view and a different opinion on how. And the way General McChrystal laid out the argument, it was really kind of based on his experiences, right? Mm-hmm. And, as a commander of very elite forces over a long period of time. And as you can imagine, you'd say, like, listen, I don't care about anything. I care about the outcome. Mm-hmm. And in the end, the policies that are being pursued right now in eradicating DEI and all of the consequences that come with that, it's a distraction. And he would even make the argument that, if we're in a full-on mobilization where we are in an existential crisis for the survival of this nation, are you going to turn people away?
Right.
On the flip side of this, right, and this is logic that won't be heard, and that is like folks who suffer from gender dysphoria, who've been treated, by the way, resources for treatment within the military health system actually are much less in terms of dollars than people with erectile dysfunction. Fact. So when you have this history of performance and you have this exceedingly high need for talent, now you're going to throw out your senior field grade officers, your senior non-commissioned officers, folks that are your performers that you're going to need in this crisis moment that we're all anticipating. And then, I don't think you and I would have predicted, we're on the cusp of seeing B-2 bombers drop 30,000-pound bombs on, Iran. So, but you know what? Pete Hegseth is an appointee of Donald Trump, and the right was extraordinary in how well they were able to capitalize on some of these culture war issues. And, when you go back and you look at some of these campaign commercials, I'm for you, she's for they, them. Mm. This is going to be like that, Reagan Carter, political commercial moment. Back in the 80s.
Concern?
Yeah, hit me.
not with you. My concern with this whole mental health card of,
Yeah.
well, people with gender dysphoria, they have a mental health condition, so they are unfit to serve in the military. I'm like, I'm on anxiety medication. I know so many people that have mental health, air quote, issues. That is such a cop out.
It is. Well, let's do this. Why don't we ask the medical professionals to weigh in on this? The American Medical Association, American Psychological Association, the American Association of Pediatricians, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And the medical community. You can't tell me that the entirety of the medical community in the world, even global components of it, believes that this is a condition that is strictly, and so it's not. I mean, I have to tell you, like when you talk to folks that are in the behavioral health community, there's a manual that guides. It's the DSM. I can't remember what the acronym means, but that was updated. Gender identity was a disorder. It used to be gender identity disorder, and in fact, that still shows up in billing codes. But it's not a disorder. It's distress caused by a lack of alignment between who you know you are. Forgive me, I'm like tapping the mic. It's gender dysphoria is about that lack of alignment between what you know in your head and your heart, and how the world interacts with you and how you move through it. And some levels of that distress need to be managed. And there are proven medical interventions that work. And unfortunately, with the Supreme Court decision that got handed down earlier this week, you've got youth, not only in Tennessee, but in 27 other states, who have their life-changing care, and in some cases, life-saving care, completely at risk of being eradicated by runaway legislators.
I'm so concerned about the education process because in our previous conversation 6 months, hey, tell Captain Mike Camoris, in 2008, what he was missing, and that homophobic mindset, that fear. How do we ease these fears? How do we educate folks on these fears to realize, we can all be warfighters?
Yeah. So, a ray of sunshine in all of this. I mean, just to be clear, right? We did that first recording before the presidential election. That put President Trump back in the White House and put him in control of the policy, not the law. There's no laws we've established that protects transgender military service. He established a policy that makes service by those of us that are diagnosed with gender dysphoria, regardless of how well it's managed and how well we actually objectively perform. It just makes a diagnosis of gender dysphoria incompatible with military service with the stroke of a pen. But the ray of sunshine, though, despite the chain of events that's set off, to include on D-Day this year, at the beginning of Pride Month, June 6th, the deadline for trans service members to select and choose to voluntarily separate, right? I mean, this is how far since we last sat and had a conversation on these issues, things have come. But the ray of sunshine in this is the state of Delaware elected the first openly transgender person to the United States Congress. And their statewide representative is Sarah McBride. She recently did a really wide-ranging and rather lengthy interview with Ezra Klein of the New York Times. I think it really gets to the fact, and this is another part of like the intersection with General McChrystal's recent comments. Like in his book, he talks about, in this chapter, them in air quotes, and it really is around the theme of othering the things and the people you fear. And so I had a chance to speak last Saturday, and this is one of the things that I chose to speak about. And we have to end the othering. It's very much like some of what you're doing here. Let's inspire people to serve. Let's share stories of people who may be very relatable to the young people who are out there thinking about putting the uniform on, like you and I and others did when we were very young. I think the same applies in the case of transgender people in this country and the debate over their existence, their rights. 70%, I might have even referenced something like this last time we talked. In the range of 70% of Americans don't know a transgender person. And in fact, I was with lunch with somebody today who has been in this fight for equality going back decades and actually surfaced some statistics from the 80s in the discussion of gay and lesbian marriage, that context. And when they were thinking about trying to move through that equality fight, right? Like at that point, very similar ratios, So there are 30% of people in America that know a trans person. We got to move that needle because we're at such a distance from real human beings. And I think, and this is what I spoke to over the weekend, is a solution is for people to begin connecting those doing the othering with those being othered. Bring them together.
Find those common similarities.
Just be one another. Be open enough just to be in the presence of that person. Physically, virtually, otherwise. Engage in a conversation. Does it have to be harmonious?
Right now, there's so many people pushing, let's go to a war with Iran. Let's do all these things in Israel and the Red Sea and all this stuff. And I think to myself, first of all, I don't want to go to war. I don't think most of us do. But if we are, then we need all hands on deck. It's not just it's frustrating. So here's my next question. So let's say I have a 18-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And she's going to join the Navy and she's going to be on an aircraft carrier. How do you comfort me as a father who's thinking, oh my gosh, there could be a trans person in the bathroom and I don't want my 18-year-old daughter to deal with that on an aircraft carrier?
Why don't you ask your 18-year-old daughter how she feels about it? Does that tell you the preponderance of Generation Alpha? Doesn't care. And when you look at the percentage of people in that age range that the preponderance of the recruits come from, 17 to 25-year-olds in this country who are qualified, they don't care. In fact, more of them identify as queer, some letter under the rainbow flag, than any earlier generations in this country have. This is more normal for them than it's unusual for the people who are in leadership positions that are trying to grapple with it. But some of these folks are politicians. Politics is about power. And if you're put in power, you got to play to the people. And that's what's going on.
Well, I'm glad you brought up politics from that perspective because of your political background in, legislative affairs.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get more people educated on the Hill for your message?
I don't think that's where it has to happen. I think it has to happen with the American people. I think the effort really needs to be in turning the tide of public opinion. And that is a very different effort than the kind of work that you and I grew up doing. Because in those legislative affairs roles, we are serving an institution and its leaders to deliver like specific and discrete results. I think public opinion, it's a campaign. And it is a broad campaign, and it is going to involve not just trans folks, like in every walk of life, but not every trans person is going to be ready to do this work. Some of them, some of us, you just want to live.
Mm-hmm.
But some of us also have to show the courage, if we have it within us, to step forward in this moment and become a face, because it's going to take time. Nobody deserves to wait for the dignity that should come with simply being human in this life. But with where things are and what I think needs to happen, specifics, you know what? That I got to still figure out. And this is why part of my exploration right now is talking with people who have some experiences from the past that we can bring forward to think about, okay, who is it we need? How do we need to approach this? What's changed? How do we just turn the tide on how people feel about others, and namely others like me and my siblings?
Are you concerned about your personal safety?
Every single day.
Have the threats increased? Has the harassment increased?
So I'm just on the cusp of becoming more public, right? Like you and I mean, we can drift into conversations about politics now.
Yeah, it took a long time.
Oh,
To wear a uniform, you sleep
yes.
smartly and
Yes.
support
Yes.
your leaders.
Yes. So, but I anticipate that as I personally grow my profile and speak out more, if that's the direction I continue to head, I've had to think very deliberately about, am I prepared to contend with what I know others have had to deal with? But even beyond that, right? Like, I think, I mean, I'll tell you, Mike, like I got asked to go to a friend's promotion ceremony down in a little town, Burlington, north of Raleigh, North Carolina. You know the terrain, you know the geography. But I drove it, and I did it like kind of on like 12 hours notice.
Mm.
And the reason why that promotion ceremony was there is because this non-commissioned officer wanted her grandmother to be a part of it. And the only way that could happen is if she took the ceremony to her grandmother at the Black Southern Baptist Church that this friend of mine was raised in, and that her grandmother was part of raising her in. So, you know, I mean, like when one of your folks says, hey, I need you there. Okay, I'll get there.
How were you received?
Nobody knew any different. I mean, and part of this is, right, like part of why you saw me the way you saw me when we first sat down to have a conversation, there was another surgery after that. And the focus for me has been around being able to do the things medically and surgically that are going to put me in a position to be presumed by others that I am a woman. I am, unquestionably, but I don't want there to be any question. Like, I'm very privileged in that sense, but it also came at a great personal toll. 3 OR sessions last year in 12 months, 13 procedures. In those 3 OR sessions, the longest was 10 hours on the table.
Oh my God, 10 hours.
Yeah. And this is for me to get to a place where I can accomplish a couple things, many things, but one of those things is to wake up and love the person I see in the mirror every morning. Another is for my own personal well-being and safety. So, you know what? I'm on the stretch of road between Petersburg and Durham. It's I-85. And that, since this change, both in administration and attitude towards others, I'm going to tell you, I was scared to be on that stretch of road between Petersburg and Durham, because I've been on roads adjacent to I-85 where you see displays that honor the Confederacy like it still exists today.
There's a lot of Confederate flags in North Carolina.
Yeah. And so I was scared and I got pulled over, and thank goodness for it. because that deputy sheriff helped me get control of my anxiety about being by myself in the rural South as an openly transgender person. I took a friend with me when I went to the court hearing for the speeding ticket last month because I wasn't sure that I would even make it out of the courthouse, which was crazy to think. But this is the kind of thinking that not just me, but other trans people are feeling just about walking out the door of their home now. What do people know? What can people discover? How do I guard myself from being discovered? Identity documents. Thank goodness. When that guy walked up, I had a driver's license that had my legal name, my proper gender, and I had a registration that matched. Because who knows what kinds of trouble that would have caused, you know? But I'm privileged in that sense. But I'm a privileged member of a marginalized community under attack. What? Like, how do those words all make sense in a sentence? It should never be this way for anybody.
Can you talk about what your next job is that you shared with me a few days ago?
So, I've got a few things going on. I am thinking about next steps. Because let me give you the rundown. I just had a great lunch today with some folks that have been in the advocacy space at senior leadership levels, mainly and almost strictly in the equality areas, and working for the LGBTQ community. So they asked me, they're like, well, tell us about yourself. Well, okay, let me tell you before I answer your question, right? Because the setup will help all of that make sense. I said, I was in the military for 33 years. This human, if that is in your presence right now, has only existed in this form, openly in the world, for 18 months. I've been retired for 51 days. I've been divorced for 17. No, look at your eyes.
I was going to ask about your kids, Ned. So.
Their jaws dropped. And we could do that. Yeah. I actually saw them from a distance for the first time in a year. But I'll tell that story in a second. So, like you, when you've spent so much time doing a thing, then all of a sudden you are thrust out the gate into this. And this is one of my favorite poets, David White, but in one of his poems, he talks about this vast field of freedom. Where do you go? What direction do you head? When do you move? At what pace? We've had a lot of those decisions made for us over a long period of time, and now we make those choices. But with everything else going on, like, I'm taking a little rest, right? But I'm working on it, and I'm working to stay in a place where I'm exploring possibilities and not hunting down specific jobs yet. But days like today help flip possibilities into real opportunities. So I'm kind of looking in a few spaces. One of them is to think about how I do this on my own. Do I get involved in the storytelling? Because one of the things I journaled on Saturday morning was to say that I think my purpose is to help create an environment in this country where trans people are seen as humans, and the next generation that comes after me has a better chance than I had at their age of living a joy-filled life of peace and contentment, right? I think that is a purpose of mine. But do I do that on my own? Or do I do that in the political domain? Mm-hmm. So I started to spend time volunteering on probably one of the pivotal campaigns and one of the only major campaigns that's going to happen between now and this November, because we have a governor's race in Virginia. And it's the only opportunity in the country to turn a governor's mansion from red to blue. And so for me, like if I want to live in Virginia and I want to feel safe being here and I want people like me to feel safe being here, I've decided that the best way to do that is to give of myself, my energy and my time to that cause for this period. And what comes after that, I don't know. So I'm volunteering, I'm seeking professional opportunities with the campaign as well, and we'll see how that unfolds and how that develops. But I was also selected between when we talked last and now through this competitive process by the LGBTQ Victory Institute to be trained as a potential candidate, as a manager of campaigns. And they're going to have an additional session, which will convene its first cohort of folks who identify as trans, non-binary, or gender non-conforming, which will be pretty groundbreaking and revolutionary. And it all happens generally thinking about how we jump off for the midterm elections and when that whole season picks up. But here in Virginia, the work's already underway. And I plan to be a part of it. But the nonprofit space is also a very important place where I want to, try to find a home, maybe professionally. Or if I have to, I'll lean back on some of my other credentials, things like you and I did on Capitol Hill or, professional services. But, I think making that purpose of mine come to life and begin to make an impact, it's going to happen in those three domains. The thing I do myself, things I do in politics for others or myself, or the things that I can collaborate with folks that have been in this space on and learn from and enhance, their efforts. So I don't know if that was your question, but
I'm very interested in this upcoming election because I think it's a bellwether to see whether people really do care, or if, depending on which news source you watch, they're just paid protesters and it's all.
I'm not so sure it is. Because your conversations here about service, right? And how I closed my remarks on Saturday, and let's be clear, this is a No Kings rally. And I was asked to, make some remarks about my experience and my views on things. And, I think you and I, as decades-long veterans of military service, I think we have a legitimate claim to understanding what it takes in order to make sure that what the Constitution was meant to do is delivering for the people that it's intended to serve, right? And so coming from that place of legitimacy, it's absolutely legit and justified for people to demand better of their government. And that's what we saw, this outpouring of folks who want better than their government. But in this country, how we peacefully do that is through elections. And so here, I completely agree with you. This is a fascinating place to be in this time as we move into the very beginnings of shaping what the midterms will look like and whether or not you've got a House and a Senate that's controlled by the Republicans for another 2 years. Yeah, it's going to be.
It's a strange environment right now because the guest that was sitting in the seat before you,
Yes.
As she was sharing some political views before we started recording, she said, well, I appreciate you still being my friend because I know where you are politically. And I wanted to say, I have no political favoritism towards one or the other. I care about right and wrong. That's all I care about.
Yes.
And I said, as a senior military leader, you can't walk around with a red or a blue, badge on your uniform. You're there for the Constitution. So when people say, well, I know how you lean, I'm like, you mean I lean towards the Constitution, what's right? Because I don't care who's in office. I just care that we're doing the things that are right.
And people could have differences of opinion about what is or isn't right or what is or isn't constitutional. That's the whole point of the Supreme Court. And we can be unhappy with the decisions that come out of places like that. And it just proves that, okay, like there's more work to do in bending the arc of justice towards what the right thing is. It doesn't do it itself.
I know. Heather and I were just talking about it. I said, we have lots of family members that are on both sides, and I could care less. It's not my job to convince you. That's the whole point of our Constitution. For you to vote and make a decision.
Yes.
I'm not going to belittle you or
Yeah.
berate you over your vote. That's your right.
Yeah. And how informed or uninformed you are when you go in to the booth to, as they used to do, pull that lever,
Yeah.
right? For the choices on the ballot that you intend to make. That's on you, friend. That's on you. And those consequences unfold as they do. And we're seeing that. I mean, like, we could get into a whole study of how the executive branch is flexing its perceived powers as handed to it over time by the Congress. You know, I mean, the imperial executive in the period of the modern presidency is a real thing, and we're watching it in action right now. Everybody's getting a civics lesson.
They are. And I feel like the previous administration went a little too far left, and now this administration's going too far right. Are we just going to continue the pendulum going bigger and bigger and bigger away from center? Or are we finally, this next administration that comes to be is one that's going to bring us back together? What do you think? I would love for it to be something that came back to the middle.
I think it's going to take time for that to come together. We are so polarized right now. And what are the things that have caused that? I mean, I've thought and reflected on some of this, especially over the last few weeks when, you know, it was formal and effective. I do not wear the uniform anymore. Right or wrong, right? First Amendment. Okay. So then how far does the First Amendment go? Well, if we say that the First Amendment also should include how money is spent in politics in this country, well, then you're going to continue to get outcomes like we get. You're going to have people like Elon Musk chasing Supreme Court seats that are up for election in Wisconsin in order to deliver political outcomes using dollars. Yeah, it is. I don't have any like fully crystallized sort of theories or thoughts about how we get out of this place that we're in. I just hope to goodness that what comes to unify us is not something catastrophic, because the way the world is right now, it could easily happen.
Yeah.
And we're better than that.
That's why I was so happy to hear that you're going to be part of this campaign in a volunteer basis, because you're so good at it. You're such a good spokesperson. You know, you're well-spoken, you're well-written. I think your skill set, and that's not for me to decide, that's for you to decide. But I just think that you're such a good advocate for whatever you choose to represent. And so
Well, I appreciate that.
I was a little sad when you're like, I don't know if I want to go work on Capitol Hill. It's like, oh, but Sloan, you're so good at it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's really about the environment, right? And so where's the change made? Yes, there is change made in changing laws or keeping bad laws from being enacted. No question about it. But where else is there change made? Change is also made when voters use their ownership in the franchise to allocate their power to people who are going to create governments that are going to serve them better. And, you know, I don't know. Another way that this is a bellwether is, and again, I'm not advocating for this particular candidate, right? But you've got somebody who's got a record, who's running as a Democrat for governor in Virginia, who was the most bipartisan member of the House, like by objective measure. She's learned how to do this, right? So what can she and her approach teach so many more of us? Whether she is or isn't the next governor of Virginia, I think she will be, but whether she is or she isn't. What can that teach us in this process, in these months, when we get to see this person and see more of her? What can that teach us about how we can change politics in this country to really, truly serve everybody?
And she's a prior service member, right?
Well, you know, what's interesting is, so her dad was in the Army, but then became a career law enforcement professional. She was in law enforcement, Postal Service inspector, then became a CIA case officer.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yes.
So she's like Elizabeth Lockett. She has a lot of that intelligence.
She's a person in her own right.
But
both of those folks, both of those
folks
have they have a history of service in their background before serving in another way. And this is really what I said to folks standing in front of a crowd of over 300 last Saturday. I'm like, listen, I appreciate being thanked for my service. But what I'm also thankful for is that people are beginning to recognize in this moment that they can also serve as well. And that service doesn't have to mean putting a uniform on and going off to war. That service can be simply making your voice heard, making your presence known, and just using your energy, time, and resources to ask for better from your government. That is service that I think any citizen should be proud of rendering this country or a Commonwealth here in Virginia or their community. That's enough. But if you want to do more, get out there. That's what you and I here are talking about.
Completely agree. Purpose-driven life. It is the secret sauce to happiness. I don't know why it's so difficult for us to teach people to understand that.
So the purpose of this discussion was really to kind of ground a conversation that we had before a massive election in today's current reality, and also to show others this much more fabulous faith. But really, like, hey, a lot's changed. A lot's changed for you and I personally. A lot's changed around us as well. And so I think as people take a look at what follows this conversation, I think we've given them some context to consider, because we couldn't have predicted the future, but regrettably, some of the things that could have turned out to be the worst case have become reality.
It's scary to think about it in that way.
I know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the follow. I look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail, helping out your team.
Look out. I might be knocking on your door.
Hi. Come on over. Thank you, Sloan.
Thank you.
This is so good. That soundbite about purpose, as you were talking, I'm like, oh my God, this is gold. She's going to love this. You will use that soundbite for your, I know that you would mention about like a YouTube page and sharing this.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
That was so good. As you were saying it, I was like, she's so good at this. Why doesn't she?
Well, you know what I need, Mike, is if you believe that, because I believe that.
Oh, it was so good. I was sitting here with a smile. Like, this is gold.
I don't know.
It's gold. Your posture, you're so put together and convincing that I wish that you could see that yourself.
I am hearing, because I am putting myself out there right now. Like, I continue to, that's why I'm sitting here with you. I continue to put myself out there because dear friends and family like you continue to emphasize as they see me in settings like this, that this is it. What I'm doing, this is the path. And I just need this tribe, and you're an important member of it. Like, not only to continue to help hold that mirror up and show it to me, but also help be a sounding board for me as I am trying to figure out what steps to take.
Yeah.
Like, I called you first because I'm like, I don't know, I have this video. I think people should see it. How do I do it? Where does it go? What do I do? You know what came on a Saturday too? Is this guy, his girlfriend comes up to me and is just, you know, being really emotional about the things that I said. And super deeply sincere. Absolutely one of the younger generation, you know, like just out of college. And then her boyfriend starts to speak up and he's like, listen, there's so much authenticity in your voice. It needs more reach.
Mm-hmm.
I want to help you with that.
That's what people tell me. I know that I am not the best interviewer. I know I'm not the best public speaker, but people identify the passion. And so and you can't really coach or encourage that, right?
No.
That's the piece that keeps it going when they
Yes.
see that energy. And I'm telling you, why don't you reach out to Ezra Klein? You said you just had a friend that was on his show. Why don't you reach out to him? Because Rianne Workala, who I work for in OC Ledge Affairs, her friend was talking to him just a few weeks ago. I listened to a podcast less than 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
On his show.
Yeah.
So why don't you
There's no reason why I can't.
Yeah.
Congresswoman Sarah McBride isn't my friend, but if you're watching, I'd love if you would be.
And you bet. Okay, so she was the one that was on this show. Okay,
Yeah.
so Rianne's friend,
Yes.
who's a national security advisor type person. She was in public affairs when
Yes.
I was working with her when Israel kicked off.
Right.
Yeah, so she was just recently on the show. So
this is exactly, yes. It's like, I keep putting myself together and growing the tribe, like in ways where the people, at least like I'm being more, it's not just a good enough word to say thoughtful and deliberate, but I'm being very considered in how so, I mean, we've talked about this, like with everything I got going on. Like the kids, here's what happened with the kids. Youngest son, Civil Air Patrol, color guard, Father's Day Nationals game. His color guard is presenting the flags at the game. One of my dearest friends from the way back in the Army, who's also a member of the community. One of the letters under the rainbow, as I've taken a say in it recently. So he helped me be like in that moment. He reached out to me Saturday night before the game and was like, okay, have you got the tickets? And I'm like, and this is like 8:30 at night. I'm like, I don't have them. I'm going to get them. I'll do it. He's like, forget it. I got it. Will you just let me help? Yes. So where do we end up? I leave it to him. He's not a sports fanatic. Not by any stretch. But baseball is like my favorite sport. Like it always was growing up, you know? And it still is in this moment. He gets us like, I don't know, 15 rows back behind the home dugout. And with a perfect line of sight view of right behind home plate where the colors are going to be presented. And so I've got on the end with a rifle and I can see him right there. And it turns out my older boy and my ex-wife were both on the field for this as well. But at least I got to see him on Father's Day.
Yeah.
So it's a lot, right? So I have to be very sort of thoughtful about when I do have the capacity and the energy, when I'm not fighting to get my retired pay started, when I'm not fighting to get, my VA claim finished, when I'm not fighting to get my gender-affirming hormone therapy reestablished either in the military health system because I've been kicked out of my clinic or to get the VA to live up to their own policy. Okay, when I'm not bleeding energy on all of these things, I'm finding opportunities to bring people into the tribe that can help me fulfill that purpose. Because I don't have all the answers. But talking to somebody like an Ezra Klein or like maybe his producer, executive producer, like, yes. And this is why I love having a friend like you. Because you can say, here's the mirror. This is what I see. You should see it too. And oh, by the way, here's an idea. Here's some encouragement. Here's a suggestion. Hey, please keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because I can't do this by myself.